to the Daily Grind, and shout out to the full-time patrons. Make sure to hit subscribe if you're new and hit thumbs up if you're not a baby back bagel biting bitch boy, cause you know what time it is. It's full time.
MMA.
And what is going on, full-time family? It is time for UFC on ESPN Plus 10 in Rochester, and of course it's going to be headlined by Rafael Dos Anjos versus the Motown phenom Kevin Lee. We unfortunately had one fighter pulled from the co-main event, Neil Magny, due to a bullshit USADA violation. We know Neil Magny's innocent. Hashtag free Magny. But we still get to see Vicente Luque in action. He is an up-and-coming welterweight you definitely should have your eye on. 8-1 in his last 9 fights. 4-fight winning streak. Finished off 4 of those dudes. And you can probably expect another finish in this co-main event. Well, they're no longer the co-main event, actually. They bumped up Shoeface Antonio Carlos Nogueira versus Ian Heinisch, which is also a great fight on the card. So, without further ado, let's get into the breakdown and predictions for UFC Fight Night Rochester. We're going to get into the first fight of the night. We'll start in the beginning and work our way to the main event. You can see the fight card here. RDA versus Kevin Lee. Antonio Carlos Jr. versus Ian Heinisch. Megan Anderson versus Felicia Spencer. We got Vicente Luque versus Derek Krantz. Charles DuBronx Oliveira taking on the Carney, Nick Lentz. Davi Ramos versus Austin Hubbard will be the first fight of the main card. Therefore, the first fight we are going to break down and make our prediction for. So let's get straight into it. In this fight, I'm actually going to be picking Austin Hubbard to win, the UFC newcomer. He trains out of Elevation Fight Team. He's making his UFC debut as the LFA champion, where he's been fighting legit competition. He's a younger and a little more experienced than his opponent, Davi Ramos, who's got 3 wins in the UFC via submission, but he really hasn't fought a lot of guys with a lot of UFC experience. You know, he's fought 3 guys in the UFC or beat 3 guys in the UFC, but those guys really hadn't paid their dues in the UFC yet. So it's even fight about. Davi Ramos definitely has a chance of winning this fight via submission, but Austin Hubbard is legit, so I think he's going to come in and take advantage of this opportunity, making his UFC debut, let everybody know just who he is. So I'm taking Austin Hubbard in this fight. Moving on to the next fight of the night, we got Nick Lentz versus Charles Oliveira. This fight, man, both of these guys are doing great as of late. They're both on win streaks. This is a trilogy fight. Hard for me to pick against Charles Oliveira in this fight, though. I'm going to have to take Charles Oliveira to win this fight. This is a trilogy between 2 storied UFC veterans with over 70 professional fights between the two. The first fight ended in a no contest when Charles Oliveira blasted Nick Lentz with an illegal knee, and the second fight Charles Oliveira won. It was a fight of the night, and Charles Oliveira ended up catching Nick Lentz in a submission, I believe in the 3rd round. So he didn't technically win the first fight, because it was an illegal knee, but Nick Lentz did not win either of these fights. So it's hard for me to pick against Charles Oliveira. He's 5 years younger with as much UFC experience, and he already has a win against Nick Lentz. So I'm giving the edge to DuBronx, Charles Oliveira. Next up, we've got Vicente Luque versus Derek Krantz. This was supposed to be Neil Magny. Derek Krantz stepping in, getting a big opportunity to fight in the UFC, but I've got to take Vicente Luque for sure in this fight. Vicente Luque is a fucking monster. He's currently riding a 4-fight winning streak, all finishes, 8-1 in his last 9 UFC fights. Originally scheduled to fight Neil Magny, who's been ranked in the UFC's welterweight division for years now, fighting a lot of the best guys. Unfortunately, he was pulled out of this fight, so now Vicente Luque will be stepping in to fight 24-10 Derek Krantz, who's also riding a 4-fight winning streak, but outside the UFC against much lesser competition. So welcome to the UFC, but I'm for sure picking Vicente Luque to win this fight. Moving on to Megan Anderson versus Felicia Spencer, who does not get the luxury of having her picture on UFC.com yet. The phenom Felicia Spencer, she's actually a bald male, according to the UFC. No, but in this fight, you might be surprised, or you might actually not be. I'm taking Felicia Spencer. Felicia Spencer is currently riding an 11-fight winning streak dating back to her second amateur fight, and she actually picked up a win over Macy Chiasson in her amateurs back in 2014, who was a beast. Macy Chiasson has made her way to the UFC, and she's tearing chicks up, so that's a fun fact. Now, Felicia Spencer is undefeated, 6-0 as a professional. She's been fighting in Invicta FC, and she's coming off of a win over Pam Sorensen. Megan Anderson is 1-1 in the UFC, losing a unanimous decision to Holly Holmes Wrestling, and she won a controversial first round eye injury TKO over Kat Zingano, but we really didn't get to see a lot from Megan in that fight because it was over with that, awkward injury. Felicia Spencer is actually a really good grappler. She's got a lot of wins by submission and even ground and pound. I believe she has one, and was fighting similar competition to Megan Anderson before Megan joined the UFC. Both of them were fighting similar competition in Invicta, and Megan Anderson really hasn't proved anything in the UFC except for she needs to work on her ground game. Megan lost embarrassingly to Holly Holm and didn't even show anything against Kat Zingano, as far as she didn't get to show anything. It's not like she didn't show it. She didn't have an opportunity because the fight didn't last long enough. She threw a kick, like her toenail cut Kat Zingano's eye. They had to stop the fight. Kat Zingano was okay, and it didn't cut her eye. It cut like her eyelid. It didn't cut her actual eyeball. So, she was okay, but the fight was stopped early, so we really didn't get to see much from Megan. Now, if Megan can keep this fight standing, she can for sure win, but I've got no reason to believe she'll be able to keep this fight standing. Holly Holm is known for her striking and took Megan Anderson to wrestling school. Felicia Spencer is actually a grappler, so until we see drastic improvement in Megan's takedown defense, I've got to pick the grappler. I got Felicia Spencer coming in the UFC and winning her debut. Now, our new co-main event, Trueface Antonio Carlos Jr. versus Ian Heinisch. I got Antonio Carlos Jr. winning this fight. Antonio Carlos Jr. has fought 9 of his 12 professional fights in the UFC. He's currently riding a 5-fight winning streak, 4 of those by way of submission, and he'll be fighting former alcoholic and Spanish convict Ian Heinisch, who earned his way to the UFC on Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series with a first-round TKO, and then won his first fight in the UFC against Cesar Ferreira via unanimous decision. I gotta pick Antonio Carlos Jr. He's got way more UFC experience, he's fought against higher-level competition, and his jiu-jitsu is some of the best in the UFC. So I got Antonio Carlos Jr. in the co-main event. Now, the moment we've all been waiting for. It's time for the main event breakdown and prediction. Rafael Dos Anjos versus Kevin Lee. Coming into this fight, man, I had a strong inclination to pick Kevin Lee. I really think that Kevin Lee is going to look amazing at this new weight class. He was already really well-rounded. He's dangerous. He could win this fight via submission. But I can't pick against Rafael Dos Anjos here, you guys. I'm picking RDA. I've got RDA. It is possible Kevin Lee gets back to looking like a title contender in this fight, not having to cut all that weight. But Rafael Dos Anjos is a former lightweight champion who now has 5 fights in the welterweight division, going 3-2. He picked up wins over Tarek Safady, Neil Magny, and Robbie Lawler, former UFC welterweight champion. He's currently riding a 2-fight losing skid at the weight class, but it was to former interim welterweight champion Colby Covington and current UFC welterweight champion Kamaru Usman. So this is still a really tough fight for me to call because Kevin Lee's dangerous. He can win this fight. He's very well-rounded, great wrestling, great submissions, good striking. He's a really good fighter, but RDA is way more proven. He's only been losing to literally the best welterweights in the world at the division. He beat everyone else that's not either a champion, current champion, or interim champion. Kevin Lee is still unproven at this division, but he is very well-rounded and can for sure win this fight. But I'm going with Rafael Dos Anjos to come out here and pick up a W. And we'll see tomorrow during the weigh-ins, or actually today since I'll be premiering this on the day of the weigh-ins. We'll see. Keep an eye on the weigh-ins because these guys might weigh in at 165 pounds. You know, a lot of fighters have been advocating for that division. Both of these guys used to fight at 155. Maybe if they show they can make 165 and put on a really good fight, it'll convince some of the big wigs to open up that division for some of these guys, so they don't have to cut all that extra weight. So, with that being said, those are my breakdowns and predictions. Hope you guys enjoyed them. Of course, make sure you tune in to the Fight Companion this weekend. It's our last weekend streaming on UFC Yankovic, because our suspension will be up in 3 days, actually 2 days from when you're hearing this. May 20th, we will be able to live stream on our main channel again. Until then, subscribe to our backup, UFC Yankovic. Also, follow us on sportsbooth.tv/fulltimemma and join our Discord. Yeah, man, if you want to chat, talk about MMA throughout the day, make sure to join the Full-Time MMA Discord. Link is in the description. And with that being said, it is what it is. Let the Full-Time family know what you think in the comments. What are your predictions? I'm out.
Bye, Felicia.